Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are joining us from the part of the world. It's just a great honor and privilege to have such an amazing individual like you being part of this conversation promoting positive sexual behavior in boys. I am Ola Akinwe, founder Boys Mentoring Advocacy Network here in Africa, Nigeria. And our goal is to cultivate boys with the tools that they need to navigate their journey from boyhood to manhood so that they can achieve positive life outcomes when they become a man and they're able to cope with life challenges that will be thrown at them as men. We have different programs for our boys. We have the flagship of our program, which is the Being a Man, is a weekly mentoring program where boys are empowered for generational impact, and we let them into what it takes to be a man and how they don't get confused about becoming a man. We operate for over 4 years, going to 5 years, 5 years plus, and we have extended our influence globally. We are a full registered non-profit also in the United States of America, and we've made network across the globe. So I'm glad to have you. I'm also known as the humanitarian guru. I believe we're first human beings and we should relate as human beings before any identity we associate ourselves with. So that being said, we also have a literacy program that will run for the children here. Initially, when we started with the boys. But when we realized the issue of literacy is not a gender issue, we open it for the other gender to be part of the literacy development. And why is that? We believe literacy, it shouldn't be a luxury, it should be a human right. And as a matter of that, we'll ensure that every child is equipped with the ability to speak, comprehend, write, and read in the age they belong to, so that they can possess the currency they will need in the knowledge economy. So if you have a child around you who is not having the literacy skills, is already limited to the kind of life he can explore. In fact, how do you open up the mind of an individual if such a person cannot read and write? So we have a weekly literacy program that runs as after-school program for young men, young boys, and we also open it up for young girls who want to acquire those skills. Then we do have also the annual Being a Man Marathon Relay. We have the Sub-Eat Rights program for boys who are also struggling with maths. I want to respect all the Indians, not maths say brothers, because when it comes to mathematics, you guys are gurus. I don't know how you do it. Maybe I'm going to ask Aniban today. You're going to give us the secret. Why maths has become the flagship of India. And you are now behind the technology that is going on in the world. So that's fantastic. So what we do with Solve It Right is it's an intervention program for young men who are struggling with maths but have the potential to go into the future of career in artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, and all of that. We are challenged here in Africa because most of our boys are not well develop in terms of their math abilities. So we have programs for them that has to address the need of them to consistently develop their math strength. We have other programs for moms of boys, which is Lara's mothers. We have the legendary program for fathers of boys, which is the FAST, Father and Son Together Festival that we run every year. So this all I can't actually mention all we do at BMAN. It's a huge organization that has programs that meets the need of how a boy just cross the bridges from boyhood to manhood. So fantastic. Thank you for joining us from anywhere in the world. We appreciate you. And I want to give Indian a big clap for this awesome participation today. And we say big, big, big thank you. So thank you once again. And as we move into this, as I open up this conversation, boys in early adolescence around the age of puberty, they tend to display most of harmful sexual behaviors and all of that. So how do we promote positive sexual behavior in boys? And as well, how were you able to get this? I mean, how do you instill positive, healthy behavior, sexual healthy behavior in boys when you are growing up? We want this from lived experiences. When I mean lived experiences, as an individual, we want you to share with us as you grow up. Were there challenges you had that had to do with your sexual orientation that affected you, or how do you acquire positive sexual behavior? So, Annibal, we are going to start with you since Dr. Cantata is not here right now. So, Annibal, would you please, how do you promote positive sexual behavior among boys and men in India? And what are the challenges like? And how do you instill this behavior in the next generation? The floor is yours, Annibal.
Well, Ola, first of all, a big thanks to you for choosing such a topic that needs to be really discussed and talked about, because all of us, most of us, are fighting for the men's rights, and we need to understand what is the root cause. The root cause is not only about matrimonial disputes or false cases and stuff. It is the complete empowerment that we need to inculcate with our boys so that they have a more brighter and better future. And it's not only about legal terms, everything. It's about social, cultural, financial, everything, mental. So, you know, this is one big issue that we have in India. I'm pretty sure that that's something that we have uh, almost most of the countries in Africa as well going through this, and this is also a big challenge when we come into India. There are more other countries, our neighbors, but we are not going to talk about them. In general, for India, it's a big issue that we have. So why? Because the first thing that comes to our mind is that if you go onto the schools here, the girls are being taught about a good touch and a bad touch. However, and with the boys, they are not taught about this. So a boy doesn't know what is a good touch and what is a bad touch for him. So we never do it. So that's a big, big issue that we have over here in India, because most of the boys who are being mentally abused or molested, rather, or maybe at times being physically abused, it remains unreported, or even the boys who go through it don't understand that they are being molested physically because they have never been taught what's a good touch and a bad touch. Like, for example, in India, there is a tradition that we have, but it's basically with other countries maybe, but with India, like the elders, when we are kids of maybe six, a year or two, they used to pull our pants down. Whenever they used to see us, they used to pull our pants down. We never thought about it. I might have been also through such situations in my childhood, but I never thought about it. But now, after working, we understand that yes, that's a kind of humiliation, a mental stress that I have been through. But I was not taught that what's a good touch or what's a bad touch. I never knew that me, someone pulling down my pants in the public is awkward. It's something that I don't like. But maybe I have not liked it as well, but I don't go ahead and speak out. So this is one big issue. The next is about the education that we have, because over here, when a boy is born, uh, the responsibilities and the expectations start from the right away from the childhood. So when he's in school, when he's in college, then his with his higher studies, then with a job to take care of parents, then his own family married life, and then kids. And finally, he is always in between these things. And basically, in India, we have been like always born and brought up. That's the culture that, the boys are the earning members of the family, the head of the family. So, we have never been taught that, yes, equivalently, a woman is also someone who is going to go ahead and take care of the families in terms of financial aspects and maybe the outdoor household uh, responsibilities that needs to be done. So this is something that we have never been. So expectations and no education to us, like education to us in the sense about sexual things. What we have been taught, it's only basically the basics of biology that we go through, but nothing deep inside. So we, when a boy comes to his puberty age, that's the age when a lot of changes happen. And if you get into the root causes, you find that this is the age wherein a boy tries to back out of his school, maybe studies, gets in with some kind of illegal activities. Uh, he detaches himself from family and friends. He tries to be. So these are things that goes ahead and creates depression, anxiety within them. And this might not come out, maybe at the age of 20 or 25. It might not, but once he achieves the age of 35, 40 plus, the trauma, the kind of depression, the kind of loneliness that he had been through during the puberty period of the boy, because he is unattended. Because in India, or in general, if we look globally, how many parents are interested to go and talk about uh, with their son, rather sit and talk about what all are the issues they are having or facing, rather, during their puberty period. But when it's with the girls, we generally go ahead and do it. So the discrimination comes over there as well, because we don't go ahead and give that chance to our son to speak out, to come and say, or to explain and educate him, like what is the difference or what is the pain that he's going through during that puberty period, what it is that is cribbing in his mind, that's beating, that's kneeling him inside, but he's unable to speak up. So these things are unattended. There are a lot many things, so I would definitely talk about if I get a chance to speak about. there are more speakers, so let me just hear them. And gradually, once we do the brainstorming, we would talk about more such issues that we have. So these are primarily the first two main issues that we have, that a good touch and a bad touch is not taught to the boys. So we don't know that what is good and what is bad sexually. For us, sexually is something different only. So we are never taught about that. And second is parents coming up and speaking with their boys during the puberty period, uh, becoming their friends and asking them that where is the issue, what is going wrong, how they are feeling, why they're moving out away from the family and nothing. All right, so I'm good to go. We'll let other speakers talk about some more issues so that I we can hear and learn. And obviously, Nikechi ma'am is there, so we know her, and she has been on like with Ola's words, a fantastic. I would add to it like a fabulous person, and boys' lives matters. They're working enormously for the boys in Africa. So a lot of things to hear from so many people out there. So let's go ahead.
Thank you, Anibal. That was quite revealing to know that growing up is not uh, very likely that a young boy in India understand what a bad touch is and a good touch. And that's going to be a very big uh, confusion for a child growing up without having to see anyone to explain that to him. I do know that. And like I said earlier on, this is an open conversation. We have other people from India who also may want to as well contribute to today's conversation. I want to believe, Aniba, when you said bad touch and good touch, does that include uh, dating violence among boys in India, or do Indian boys exude or kind of behave violently against whether other boys or other girls in India? Secondly, as a young man who grew up in India, at what point in your life were you able to really differentiate between a bad touch and a good touch? And what difference does that make to your life at that time?
Well, that's a wonderful question. Now, if you ask me, like I started knowing about all this once I started working with Nandini D and for All Bengal Men's Forum, because as I said, that we never thought about this. These things never came in our mind. The moment we started working for the boys, uh, you know, we started attending different international seminars, uh, you know, studying, doing our R&D, and then we came to understand about these particular good touch and bad touch. And then today, when I relate myself to my childhood, I can make out like what would have been the differences if I would have also been, uh, you know, thought about what's a good touch and a bad touch. Maybe there are times that I have been through a bad touch, but I cannot, I didn't even understand it at that point of time. But now it's tough for me to even recall such things, which I never thought that was a bad touch for me. But now today, once I'm working for the organization, for the boys, for the men, now I understand that we're morally it affects the boys, and where exactly these boys go through some kind of issues altogether in their childhood, and then uh, develop a different kind of a mentality, maybe a characteristics, or maybe a different person altogether once they are into the when they fall in the manhood. So it's a huge impact and effect that it has. So this is something that every boys, and as I said, like this particular thing, just imagine like a boy, I come down to my uncle's place maybe, and my aunts and everyone are sitting. I'm of the age of 2 years, and my uncle simply pulls down my, or maybe my nephew pulls down my pants. So that was jokingly. I never understood also that what's happening. But if we look in today, it's a kind of humiliation. Maybe I might not have thought about it. I might not be a victim of it. But every day, knowingly or unknowingly, all boys go through this mental stress or trauma, which they fail to understand that this is a kind of a bad touch that you're altogether having, someone pulling your pants down in front of so many people. So uh, there is a lot to talk about, Paula. So these are basic differences that I can make out, that yes, and I don't want these things to happen. I want the boys to understand, because if we need to really have gentle men in the future, we need to make sure that we have gentle boys in the beginning itself. And for that, the society needs to take a lot of responsibilities and understand and educate the boys, their families, the society, so that everything is taken care of and it's properly balanced.
Oh, we come back to you, Shina. That's very revealing. I get your point there. Though you may not have experience of being a victim of a bad touch or a good touch growing up. You made mention of that, and this is one of the things I personally believe we should all work around to ensure that our boys understand when they get to that age of when they are that level where the hormones rush is coming in, and they want to really know, oh, why is my body changing? Do I need to explore my body or explore the body of other people? What not to do and what to do and how we can help them. This will lead me to bringing on board my very own Nkechi. She is being a huge advocate of boys' sexual reproductive health in Nigeria. She's a voice in Africa. A lot of us will look up to her when it comes to boys' sexual reproductive health. And I've known her for quite a number of years now. We'll be very good and very close friends, like I said from the beginning. But Nkechi, she's a mother, a young prince. That's how I refer to her son. And the boy has been my mentee as well, which I try to guide. Um, I'm sorry to say this, Nkechi is, I don't want to give her a label, call her a widow or something like that. No, she's a mom, she's a woman who husband has been with the Lord. And right now she has two wonderful children, a boy and a girl. I call them Prince and Princess. These people I relate with almost every week. And we do talk a lot about her fears, about her raising her son to become a man who will behave positively when it comes to the sexuality and all of that. So, Nkechi, we want to have you with us. Your experience watching your son growing up as a boy to the age where is it now? How were you able to explain to him what are the likely positive behavior that is expected of him, and as well as your work with Boys Life Matters here in Nigeria, and how you have taken this boys' sexual reproductive health, a big challenge, and all the things you want to really be a voice for when it comes to promoting positive sexual behaviors in boys. And how do you think we can inculcate this positive sexual behavior in that little boy next to you in your neighborhood? You know, and what are from experience? I know you've written a lot of articles, a lot of write-up, a lot of things you had witnessed. What can we do? How do we help our boys? The floor is yours, Nkechi. Introduce yourself briefly. I'm glad to have your contribution. Thank you.
All right, so good afternoon, gentlemen. It's it's nice being here, and of course, Ola and his introduction. Okay, we are soulmates. He knows that. Okay, so my name is Nkechi Macaulay, and I'm the founder of Boys Lives Matter Foundation. It's an organization that's designed to create awareness on the sexual abuse of the boy child, educate and enlighten boys about sex education. And I have been doing that for the past 4 years. I have been touring school, talking to boys strictly about sex education, and have been trying to also educate parents on how to have conversations as regards sexual health, adolescent reproductive health with their sons. It's been an eye-opener. And also being a mother of an 11-year-old son whom I'm raising singularly, it's been quite a journey. And I just felt passionate that we need to pay attention to boys and their sexual health, because when you raise a boy with enough information as regards sexual health, he would definitely make informed decisions as an adult as regards sex. And well, unfortunately for us, in my part of my world, sex is seen as, talking about sex is seen as a taboo. It is not an ideal thing to talk about sex. So you find a lot of parents do not talk about sexual health issues with their boys. They may have a conversation with the girl child, yes, but the boys, they know nothing. They are told nothing. So they just get involved into, sex without information, and they get into a lot of trouble. So when I began my campaign, I discovered that a lot of boys did not know anything about sexual health education. Even in the schools, when they talk about sexual, in the schools, they don't, it is not designed or tailored for the boy to understand and help him do the right thing. I have countless stories, but I will start with the first one first. First and foremost, I live in a world, in my part of my world, where we see the penis as a weapon of mass destruction. A woman who is not enlightened believes that the penis has two major functions: to procreate and destruction and pleasure. So there's this biased view about the penis. So when you find a young boy who has an erection, every woman around him thinks, oh my God, he wants to do something bad. There is a wrong view about the word erection. It is seen as if when a boy has an erection, he's asking for sex. And so when I began my campaign and trying to enlighten mothers and parents about, having sex education conversation with their boys, we discovered that a lot of mothers kept asking me questions like, my son has an erection. It's too much. There's something wrong with him. I have seen mothers ask me, I had to slap my son one day because he was talking to me and he had an erection. I've also had a mom say to me and said, my son will not come down from the bed because of erection. Is he thinking about sex? Why is he having an erection in the mornings? Why in the afternoon? Why is it regular? What is wrong with him? Is he thinking about sex? And I'm like, no. Erection is a normal response in men, in males. There's nothing wrong with erection. And she was asking me, is he thinking about sex? I said no. At that age, it is a normal biological response to stimuli. So when you have parents, especially mothers who raise boys more, have a biased view about erection, about the penis, then the boy is in trouble because no one will tell him what is going on with his body. So I've had several of these kinds of meeting up with a lot of parents who think there's something wrong with their son for having an erection. I've met with boys who have complained that I'm in class, I have an erection, what is wrong with me? Is something wrong with me? You see boys asking me those kind of questions, what is wrong with me? Because they make him feel that having an erection shows there's something wrong with him. So these are the issues that I'm trying to tackle in my own society and trying to enlighten, especially mothers who do not have information about boys and their reproductive health. So this is what I do as a boys advocate. I talk to mom because we have more mothers, raising boys. We have more mothers with the boy child. So they need to be informed what goes on in the boy as he tapers into puberty. Now I'm going to share a story that happened 2 years ago in my community. My son, I was sleeping and my son said, mom, rape. I jumped out of my bed and I went outside and I saw this boy, he's 13. And he sexually harassed a girl she was 3 then or 4. And they caught him about doing the act. And I think he tried to penetrate the girl, but he didn't go deep into the girl. And he just started screaming. And they caught him. And guess what they did to him? They brought him out. He was just 13 then. He was brought outside. He was stripped naked, tied to a tree, and they were flogging him. They were beating him and accusing him of being a rapist. And so I came on the scene and I began to pacify all the men. These were men and boys who were doing that to a child. So I had to pacify all of them. And I said, hey, everyone back down. Let me handle this. He's a child. He's 13, he's a child. Let's call the police instead. They would have killed him. Let's call the police instead. So they called the police and the boy was picked up to the police station. I had to go and pick up the girl and see what I can do to help her. So that girl was taken to the clinic and attended to. So I went to the police station and I met the boy still naked. And I asked this officer, I know what he has done is a crime, but he is 13, he's a child. And under the child's right law, whatever he has done was done out of ignorance. So I had to plead and the family paid 10,000 naira to get him out. I told the police officer, I said, look, I will handle this boy, give him to me. Let me talk with him. And I got that boy out of the police station the next day. And I began to mentor him. I started asking him questions. Why you do what you did? He said he doesn't know. But he can't explain why he did it. So I asked him and I discovered that in my interaction with him, he has never been exposed to sex education. He was already experiencing puberty. And if you know how to handle his body, if you know how to control the sexual urge, he had no understanding about sexual urge. And also, he was also raised by a father who is an alcoholic and a grandmother who didn't care. So I went to their home and I discovered that he was living in the midst of men who were, there were drugs going on, there was sex going on. So that was the lifestyle he knows. And so he told me he had been having sexual urge and he didn't know what to do with it. I had to school him on sex education. Took him through how to handle sexual urge. We did that for a couple of times and he got the message. And I'm so happy that he is, since that time till now, he has never again molested any other child because he was exposed to what education. I'm saying this because it's unfortunate that our men, our fathers, who I expect to be the forefront of call to expose boys, do not talk to boys about sex education. I've had to harass fathers. What are you doing? You have a son. You don't even expose your son to sex education. He knows nothing about his body. And they tell me your mother will handle it. I don't have enough time to talk to my son about that. His mom can handle. I said, your wife cannot handle that kind of conversation. You as a father, you need to sit down with your son, have a heart-to-heart talk about sexual health issues. Your son needs that information. And it breaks my heart to be where I am living in and discover that lots of boys are not. They stumble into sex. They have unprotected sex. They're making babies. We are raping girls. It is pathetic. And my heart breaks because there's no attention given to boys and their reproductive health education. Even in our schools, there's no curriculum designed or tailored to help the boy understand what is happening to his body and how to manage his sexual urge and, really make informed decisions about sex. So you have a group of boys growing up, not having been exposed to education, and they stumble into sex and boom, it becomes a nightmare. So we are still dealing with that kind of issue in my society, and we are trying so hard to see the need to champion the cause to have a curriculum in schools, but it's tailored for the boy child. We can have boys have conversations. Now, I've been in a school where a boy called me and said, hey, mom, please, can I talk with you? He said, yes. He said, okay, I'm deeply worried. I don't know what's wrong with me. Am I ill? I discovered that some nights that I sleep, I wake up and I feel and I see wetness in my trousers, in my pajamas. And I'm wondering what this is. And I'm scared. What is wrong with me? I just sat down and I said, oh my God. He had no one else to express his pain or his fears. So when I spoke with him, I made him understand what he was going through was called wet dreams or nocturnal emission. And I started to explain what it was. And it's part of puberty, but there's nothing wrong with him. And he was so happy. He was like, oh, you said yes. There's nothing wrong with you. You're growing up, be a man. Like, oh my God, I thought I was being ill or something. So I was just, where do we start from this kind of conversation? Where do we even start from? Who is helping the boy understand what is going on with his body? He also explained to me that he's trying to understand why his female cousin that sleeps with him on the same bed has a habit of touching his penis at night. That then most time you have an erection and he has told her to stop. She's not stopping. What can he do? Now, you have to tell your mom or your dad that your female cousin is harassing you sexually at night. Tell her it is wrong, that she has to stop doing that. And he didn't know that he ought to speak up against being harassed sexually. So I'm not wondering, why would you pair up a female cousin with your son in the same bed? So he was going through these issues. Where was his father? Where was his father? His father should have been the first person to help him understand what he was going through. He ought to have been the go-to person to help him deal with the issue of anxiety as regards puberty. There are so many boys in, at the puberty level having no one to help them explain what is going wrong with their bodies. When I attend schools and I talk to boys alone and they tell me a lot of stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, this is serious. So it's important that we need to have this conversation. I am so happy we're having this talk, and I'm hoping that at the end we can bring up a communique that we have to let the whole world know that boys and their sexual health is an integral part of their development, that we need to pay critical attention to boys and their sexual health. I'll stop for now.
Uncle Jerome.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
That was fantastic. I couldn't agree less, Nkechi. I could not have agreed less. And
I've been taken aback because in the United States, we have very little advocacy for boys and their sexuality. It is suppressed to no, and in the Black and brown community, it's much more suppressed.
Absolutely, you're right.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Jerome Taylor. I'm very humbled to be on this panel with you guys. I've never actually dealt with international issues, but I spoke with him and we had something in common because I did my DNA and my DNA was like 40–50% Nigerian. So once I found that out, I said, I got to go to Nigeria. And when I found out he was in Nigeria, that's when we connected. And I'm like, I'm coming to Nigeria. So believe me, I will be there one day. I don't know when, but I'm going to get there.
Soon, I can tell you. Sooner than you think.
So I'm a retired board education administrator. And I've worked with boys from 16 to 21 in institutions like jails, drug programs for 30 years, 32 years to be exact. And I retired a few years ago. Some of the issues that come up that I realize happens is that 90% of 95% of the boys that I've dealt with that's incarcerated are from 16 to 21 years old, and they're mostly Black and brown. Very few Caucasians get incarcerated, at least in New York City, where the city I was working with. Their sexual, their prime sexual development is within those years. So many of them, and maybe like 2 out of 5 Black African-American kids end up in institutions, and they do not experience a natural sexual development at all. When they come out, they've been sexually depressed for so many years that they actually don't even understand their own sexuality. Nobody explained it to them when they were kids, and now they're institutionalized. And when they come out, they have a man's body, and they don't even know what to do with it. So there comes the sexual aggressions that young men in our communities display all the time. Because basically they're a bunch of young men packed into institutions telling each other what sexuality is, when none of them actually know what sexuality is. So they use videotapes, books, lies, And they continually to impress people with that. And then when they come out of these institutions, they try to act those things out. We have no one addressing that issue at all. Our young men in our communities come out of the institutions with that mentality, and they're never addressed. They just walk around, they impregnate women, take very little responsibility for it. A lot of them do not even know who their fathers were, because this is a perpetual thing that's been done in the Black and brown community for so many years, that it kind of created some type of belief. So nobody actually, like, they speak to women and to what's the young lady's name again? I can't hear you. Pronounce that again.
Nkechi. Her name is Nkechi.
In our communities, okay, in our communities, we have a saying: they raise their girls and they love their sons. So they don't raise their sons, they just love them. And the girls are raised to be responsible and educated and to protect their sexuality and about their sexuality and how to avoid different things in their sexual development. And the boys are not. And then they're ushered off into institutions where they come back out 3 or 4 years later with grown men bodies and child mentalities. And this creates a whole community of dysfunctional families. So on this side, we really, really need that type of advocacy. I've never even seen women advocate for Black men's sexual development. That on this side of the river. I'm sorry to say, but that's a very unusual thing for me to see. And I kind of applaud her. And hopefully we can actually, develop a relationship and begin to work with you on this side to open up a non-for-profit and work with those guys and address those issues. Those are really serious issues that's never been pointed out. And of course, from the brothers in India that spoke about the sexual harassment, those same sexual harassments are done in institutions in the United States. They put kids in institutions where they are dominating or harassing or sexually harassing the weakest in the groups, which turn into a whole nother situation when they're released. We have had some success in teenage pregnancy in this country, in the city, actually. I'm talking about New York. It's been a 60% decline, but there's also been a 65% increase in incarceration of youth. And that decline also came on the other end of 1995 of the AIDS epidemic when it was at its peak. Then a lot of other things that we suffer with in our community that contributes to sexual promiscuous and irresponsibility is drugs. We have a lot of drugs in our communities, and in the Black and brown community, they tend to have a large effect. I will give you an example of a woman that I knew that used to work and was respectful and had a child. She was a single parent, and she basically became a drug addict, abandoned her child, and was doing sexual favors for people just to get drugs, basically, just to get drugs. I would love to find networks that we can use to help fund the programs on this side of the river, ocean, to create and duplicate the services that you guys are doing over there. I really applaud you for what you're doing. And it really opens up my eyes to some things that I already knew were there in our community, but we never addressed it. It's not addressed in our communities. We'll talk about jobs, we'll talk about sports, we'll talk about crime, we'll talk about drugs, we'll talk about housing, we'll talk about teenage pregnancy. But most of it, they never address sexual maturity or development for young men. It's just something that has been ignored for so many years, and is really has a negative effect on us as a community, because we have so many dysfunctional structured families in our community now. We have about 78% of our households in the Black and brown communities head by women. There's no man there on record. And it's kind of like they promote it, because a lot of women have kids, and then the government will take care of them and give them housing. And long as they, deny having any relationships with the male, which basically takes the male away from the household, which basically then there's nobody there to teach the young men how to be young men, the male children how to become men. I was fortunate, I was fortunate. I had good role models. I had a father and a mother, and we came from a nuclear family. But there was a lot of other destructive things in our community, because when you got 78% of the community dysfunctional, you're fighting a wave of dysfunction in a community that we can't control, that we have no control. We don't control, and I don't know if people realize this, but in our country over here in the United States, we don't have control over banks, schools, movies, basketball. We don't own any of that stuff. We're just like a demographic group of people who are here to consume, So yeah, hopefully, we can help, and we can partner up and do some things that we can actually help develop, help address the issues of young men and their sexualities, and the boys, of how to develop a healthy sexuality, because we don't have that in the United States, as far as I know. That's where I stand in on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Jerome, for sharing that with us. And I also want to thank Ikechi for being the voice for sexual reproductive health among young boys. I remember when she wanted to start about 3 years ago, we met, and I told her that this is obviously a new terrain that is going to be much more Herculean when it comes to the task of being an advocate for boys' sexual reproductive health and behaviors. She's a vanguard. But what I want to Uncle Jerome is of the. I want to put 1 or 2 questions to him, but since he will join us back, I'm pretty sure. What I'm looking at when it comes to sexual behaviors, because like he did mention, drug as a trigger for sexual aggression in boys. How do we reduce the consumption of drugs among young boys that is an indicator for sexual aggression? Whose responsibility it is to share with our boys, to educate our boys about sexual behaviors and how not to make drug as a substance that can further lead to aggression, even against their fellow men and also women. Uncle Mike, what do you have to say about it?
Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Olaf, for this opportunity. And I commend you for holding these sessions on very important topics like this. Great. Yeah, so, when we think of drugs is quite often used as a way to mask pain, right? The big challenge we have is to create spaces for young boys where they can be productive, where they can be creative, where they can feel safe and be mentored and encouraged. If they don't find these spaces, they create their own, like you would say, gang and communities. And they're not being poured into, they're not being mentored, they're not being cared for the way that they need to be cared for. So therefore, they carry a lot of pain. So to answer your question, they have to mask that pain. A lot of pain, a lot of confusion, like our sister so well. I mean, her presentation was just so powerful. Her passion is contagious. And, but the thing is, we all need to get that type of compassion and passion that our sister has. So when they have all this pain and confusion, they have to mask the pain some way. So someone gives them drugs and they're like, wow, I can escape the pain that I'm feeling. And then unfortunately, that leads to more pain because now they're doing activities that's not responsible. So it's a cycle. So we have to think of solutions that's very practical and very sustainable. And we have to, some organizations are creating centers, youth centers, where they have like, it's just one organization, they have a room where the kids can engage in being creative with their music, with technology, with drama, where they can be, they've invested a lot of money, all the equipment with broadcasting. So the kids get engaged and they're like, wow, I could create something, I can produce something, rather than roaming the streets. And like Brother Jerome was saying, educating or miseducating each other. So the drugs is really not the problem. That's not, we have to get to the root of the problem, and that is we have to find a way that they don't walk around with such pain, such confusion, that they have to find ways to mask the pain. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just my take on what we're talking about here with drugs.
Yeah, thank you, Uncle Mike. What I'm really liking us to look at before a child or a young boy even get into drugs, because this was one of the things I draw from Mr. Jerome's presentation, and that leads to sexual aggression among young boys. And it's very, very real that sometimes boys have to be high on drugs to take down on the opposite sex or explore other bodies like themselves. And like you did mention, drugs is not the primary concern. The primary concern is, has this young man find a space where he can transmute his energy into other activities that are very productive. And having to do that, we live in a world where, I don't know how to put this, but I'll try to explain it. Where men who are genuine in terms of looking for positive outcomes in the life of our boys are less in number than the number of men who want to exploit others. So how do we raise the bar of to use bad or good men, of men in our different communities who becomes or who create safe places where our boys can understand how to manage their sexual urge and hormones while growing up. If you listen to Nkechi very well, from the story she shared, she just tells us that, look, a boy at 18 who had never had a conversation with the changes going on in his body, and up to the point where he molested a young girl, he didn't understand what he ought to do with his body. Adisa, Mitema, please.
Yes.
We want to have your view as a man. How do you think we, as generative adults as men, can instill positive, healthy sexual behaviors in our young boys?
Okay, hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, because I'm trying to get my mic together. Let me try this. 1 second. Anybody can hear me? No, right? Okay, hold on. I'm going to turn it back. Yeah, I haven't done this Zoom thing in a long time.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so now you can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just cut this. Okay, I should be good. All right. So can you give me that question again? I was juggling around with this doggone mic.
Okay. The question is, how do we as men now instill positive, healthy sexual behaviors in our young boys?
I don't think it's a difficult task. The most difficult task is the media and how they portray our young boys. That's the incidentally, I'm a decent teamer, and I'm Jerome's friend for many years. In fact, we both worked in the prison system. I'm a retired teacher. Yeah, but I think the biggest issue is the media. We have to take it from the angle of seeing what we could do about the media. You see, and not to come down so hard on these civil rights groups, but they haven't done their jobs, and they're directing their energy to the wrong place when they should be directing their energy towards the media. Now, Jerome said something earlier when he was referring to how, and I was thinking about this. I just got out of the rain. I was out. He said something about how women can receive all of these services, but men, and I'll take a cue from him. I'll say black and brown. Men cannot receive these services, and that's a big problem. If I was a homeless guy with my son, I have a son, I would not be able to receive welfare services. You know, I think we have to, and I applaud that lady that was on earlier. We have to look at our women and redirect them, because they seem to fall for all these traps that have caused these young boys to not understand their sexuality because there's no man in the house. You know, so there's a lot of factors, but I think we have to attack it from in the household first. There's so many images. I don't know if you guys remember, Jeff Bezos allegedly was going to give these black women all this money, which it didn't happen. So they really applauded for nothing. You see, I'm a child of the 60s, so I can remember when the men start leaving the home. In fact, I'm 62. I remember when the men started leaving the home, and I remember why they started leaving the home, because the government became the husbands of these women, those who fell into those traps. They became the husbands. And so we have to recondition them, or if we have daughters, we have to recondition them. It's almost like we have to start over. Because I don't think women in my generation who've been programmed will be able to be deprogrammed into believing that we have to start here. Now, I'm not giving the government a way out, because they're responsible for all of this. Some of you guys, if you can remember, and I'm referring to Brother Mike, you remember this movie called Claudine, where I don't know if you remember, James Earl Jones and Diane Carroll, where they addressed these issues, but we saw it as entertainment, a lot of us. But that's exactly what happened in our community. And I don't know if Brother Ola saw it. He seems like a younger man, and the other brothers on the panel, but that's exactly what happened. And I urge everyone to see the movie so you can get a better understanding of what happened here. See, our people come from the land, they come here, they think that we're just dysfunctional without knowing the root of the problem, you know? So it can change. We just need efforts like this, man groups. And no offense to the sister, but we need man groups. In fact, I headed one when I was in college, but the person who was the facilitator wasn't right for us. It should be people who look like us that should have been a facilitator. Yeah, but let's see. You said something else. I'm trying to think of what you said. Oh, as related to sexual health. Well, hey, that's the job of our fathers, not our mothers, to teach us that. And if our fathers are not in the home, it's chaos. You know, fortunately for me, Jerome happened to know my biological parents before they died, and the father that raised me, who wasn't my biological father. But I had somebody, so I had an advantage over a lot of people in my neighborhood. Anyway, I was born in Harlem. I grew up in Brooklyn. Like Jerome, born in the Bronx, grew up in Brooklyn, pretty much with his family. Yeah. So I hope I answered the question as best as I could. Maybe I missed something.
Yeah, you did, but I'm still going to come back to you, sir, because Jerome is not here and happen to know that you both work together for a long years in the same organization or workplace. He did say that when you look at the number of young men in prisons, and you find more of black and brown than more of Caucasian and white.
Right.
Yeah. And when you look at boys who are incarcerated based on sexual offenses, you have more of black and brown than the white and the Caucasian. What do you think, in your view, that these Caucasian and white are doing that our black and brown fathers aren't doing, that is leading our young men into incarceration?
Well, you know, it's not what our black fathers are doing. The issue is we're being railroaded by other people that don't look like us, and that is a fact. You know, look, here's the problem as it relates to sexuality. The problem is this: if you're from a single family household, particularly we know it's mainly mothers, here's a big issue. The big issue is who these mothers bring into the household when there's no fathers around. And sometimes they could be sexual predators, male or female. And that's a big issue in our community that we don't want to address. when we had these single parent households and these mothers bringing man or woman, and they're sexual predators. They sexually assault our children. That's an issue that we haven't really addressed, you know? Even in our religious institutions, the same thing. If you have that single mother take their children to the church, and they have so much faith in these religious leaders, some of them will be molesting the children, you know? And we have to really look at that with an open eye to see that these things happen, and they happen frequently, you know, and they have happened in the past. You know, like I said, fortunately, I had that father around, because who knows what would happen, you know? So we have to put the pressure on these religious institutions too, because they kind of played a blind game, like they don't know what's going on with these things. I mean, look at it historically. And Brother Mike, you might not be my age. I'll be 63 in May. But let me tell you this, these religious institutions, they're just as much as a problem. Because now when these single women go in with their children to these places, that preacher or imam, they become the father. And that's the wrong father, sorry to say. That father is the wrong father. So we have to address these issues. We have to go from the inside and then come out. You know, we already know about the external factors, like Jerome was saying, like the drug and alcoholism. We know about the external factors, you know, but we have to attack this thing also from the inside. I don't know if I answered your question. I hope I did.
You did. You did. Uncle Mike raised his hand. Maybe you want to make one or two inputs before we go to our Indian audience who have been listening actively and want to also make contribution to this ongoing conversation. Uncle Mike, you did.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I'm going to be 67, so I got you by a few years.
You don't have me by much.
I have by a few years. But I just want to mention that what you say is so on point, but I also want to give another perspective that I had the opportunity to live in communities of privilege. And why we don't see them in the prison is because they have the means to cover up what they're doing. So the thing is, the Black and brown boys, right away, they get thrown in prison, and that's why the percentage is so high. But their counterparts are engaged in all types of things also, but they have the means to stay out of the system. So they're privileged class. They feel that they have they feel entitled. And they're doing the same thing, even more, but they're not getting incarcerated because of the means that they have. So I just wanted to throw that in also.
No.
Your question was why there's more Black and brown in the prison system. Well, that's one of the reasons. I just want
Right. Well, can I just interject, Brother Mike?
Sure.
The pop, and it's you brought up the real problem. When Jerome and I worked on Rikers, I worked 33 years, he worked 32. When we worked on Rikers, we would see white kids come in and they would shuffle them right on out. Oh, it's too dangerous. But it wasn't dangerous when you was doing that crime. But now all of a sudden you around these Blacks and Latinos, it's dangerous. It wasn't dangerous for you before, but they also have a community. That's the great part. They have a community. I remember when I was a kid, you probably remember also, Brother Mike, if you did something in the street, one of them neighbors who knew your parents, oh, they was going to jump dead in it. So it was no escape for you. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you for adding that to it. And Mike, thank you for bringing also that into this discourse. Oh, thank you for unmuting yourself. Yeah, our brother from Tanzania could not join us in this conversation because it is pouring heavily there with thunderstorm. Internet connectivity is not good at the moment. So we won't be having Dr. Data on this call. And like I said, it's also pouring in Nigeria right now, heavily. And a lot of people might have internet connectivity. And I see that Ikechi just reached me, she'll be in and out because of also the outpouring of the rain and how the weather looks. But that will not stop us to have views from our brothers in India. When it comes to India, we want to know from Saha, growing up as a young boy, if Saha is there, please, yeah. How were you developed, or how did you cultivate positive sexual behavior as a young boy? And how are the Indians helping young boys to receive positive sexual behaviors today? Anyone from India who wants to take up that question? Yes, sir. Good to have you. Abhishek Saha.
Hi.
Yeah, yeah.
Hi, good evening. This is Avinash here. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you for giving this opportunity on this platform. I heard Mr. Anirban, I heard you, I heard
Avinash, I think we want Abhishek to speak something about it.
Okay, if Abhishek is taking the lead, that's great enough. He said to anyone from India. So, all right, if Abhishek goes ahead.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible now, Shah.
Yeah. Good evening. Sorry for joining a little bit late, being like a little bit being in a busy this thing profession has its own this thing demerits. Basically the thing is that the question that you have given, technically, considering in our society we are still very this thing conservative about our views on the the sexuality and that part and that it is still
the construction of positive sexual behavior in boys. How do you approach it from the Indian society?
Well, basically, since we are a mosaic of a lot of different cultures or different states, as you must be knowing, India is has lot many different cultures and like sects, as well as we have different systems in different societies. So putting a view forward for only as an Indian, this thing would not be the right thing to do. But generally, what we normally say is that as the parents, they normally don't talk that much about the positive sexual reinforcement or the behavior to their children when they are in the adolescent age group, or they know it is more of a self-taught and I will say more of a self-taught and peer taught, you can say that the friends and everyone, that's how the things have been for the last few years. They have always it is more of the boys, the young age boys, adolescent boys, they normally learn from the experiment, like the various experimentation, as well as they are self-taught in one way. Whereas the positive reinforcement that you're talking about, yes, in the last few years, there have been a little bit of progress in that. I think our the various male organizations, they have been at the forefront of educating people that a positive reinforcement does have a role in shaping the mindset of the adolescent male. And in a way, you can say that with the advent of branches like child psychology, as well as the parents who have been paying a lot of attention to their towards the male child psychological development. Like I had recently a classmate of mine whose son was in the adolescent age group, and basically she had asked me to, for a proper counselor for her son. So in a way, the parents are becoming more aware in India about the need for a positive, what do you tell, the positive psychological reinforcement or positive psychological education to the male child. And I think there is still a lot of work which needs to be done in this perspective. So it is a work in progress, but I conclude by saying that, yeah, definitely some progress has been made in the last few years in this.
Okay, thank you for sharing that with us, and we did appreciate your view. One of the things I want everyone to make contribution into now is looking at sex and gender, and how has this brought confusion into our young men and young boys growing up. Today we have sex known as our biological makeup, and our gender is now defined as who we used to be, or who we choose to be. Now, how has this affected, or how is it affecting, or how is it becoming something like a confused issue for our young men? Uncle Gerald.
Hello?
Yeah.
Well, that is a big issue in the United States. It's a huge issue, and it's being promoted. And the promoting of that is actually affecting kids, because people who have bigger platforms engage in these type of assumptions and with no professional information or study or anything. So there's becoming like a market for it. It's a trend. And people are saying, well, the kids should know. A kid, I didn't know at 5 years old. So yeah. I don't know how another kid's gonna know at 5 years old, but this is what they were born like that. I don't know. I'm 65 years old, and this trend has confused me.
Okay.
I'm not biased. I have a transgender nephew, but at 4 or 5 years old, it's very, for kids to be identifying as them, it's confusing to me. So I feel like, and they're putting a big platform out there, which does not help in African-American communities in the United States, because we're already at a high level of single parent households and community structure and institutionalization of drugs. So that doesn't help us. It just hinders us and holds and confuses us even more.
So when we look at it from this angle of confusion, would you say that this has also is contributing to unhealthy sexual behaviors among young boys and men?
Definitely. It's kind of like promoting it at a very young age, when we're not really sure of as a young man, our own identities, and it makes it much harder for them to find their way in life when, you know, if you're different, they put you in these categories of what a man should be. And when you come out of a community where there's a head of households, 79% of it are women, you really don't have an idea of what a man should be unless you have somebody in your household can explain, or uncle or a distant relative or community. Then you really don't know what a man can be. So you're like, well, I guess a man could be anything they want to be, you know. And that's confusing because, you know, human nature tells us that we are going to take, the brain's going to take you the easiest route for survival. So if you look at males in the United States and you say, well, they have the highest rate of homicides, the highest rate of incarceration, lowest rate of education, the highest rate of incarceration, that's not an easy road to climb. So it becomes very intimidating. And if you have young people that are very easily influenced, they may think that the easier route is to unidentify yourself as an African-American male.
Yeah, thank you. Let me go to India. Is anyone from India, Emari, Aniba, and the team? How do you resolve this, or how do you approach the issue of this gender identity confusion in India? Or has it not penetrated to India, or is not manifesting in your country right now, where our young boys are confused about their gender identity or the new set of gender identity we have all over the world? Anima, there's a lot of background noise from your end. Is there a way you could help us reduce the influence of other sounds that are coming so that we can properly hear you on this platform? Or do you have, probably if you have another gadget or a handset or laptop on, you could help us switch it off so that you can speak and we can hear from your end. It appears that you are speaking from two gadgets. Or can you hear me? There's a lot of echo coming from your background, a lot of echo. It appears that where you are right now, probably there's another person running on the same call on this. So there's an echo coming from your end. Or would you prefer someone from India to respond to this so that we don't miss the answers appropriately? Avanish, are you there, please? Avanish Katri. Yes, I was saying about the issue of gender identity confusion. Now we have, in the past, when you talk about sex, people refer to female and male. And this is what have driven the society to a large extent. Now you don't refer to sex as gender anymore. We have different genders now, people wearing different gender. Has it been an issue in India? Is it contributing to unhealthy sexual behavior in India? And if it is so, how and what steps are your organization taking in India to reverse or just handle this or correct them?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you, Akinwe. Thank you to everyone to giving the opportunity to share our view as well here. I think the root cause here, what we should be looking at, is the gender equality. Right? The society at times just move from patriarchy to matriarchy. Just because a particular segment of the society they believe is deprived of or is underprivileged, they give more power, they give extra support. In that way, we create an imbalance in the society. Apart from the biological difference that we have between a boy or a girl, there should not be any sexual discrimination. From the very early childhood, we are taught here in the society that boys are the earning member of the society or the earning member of the family, whereas the girl is always treated as a delicate darling. They are treated as a princess. That is true, like they are delicate, but it should not be like they have to be taught in another way to be dependent on the male member of the family. In this way, we are just creating a monster among the society of being a dependent on other. Hence, the need of the hour here is to change the mindset that every individual is an independent member and should be able to take care of himself or herself, irrespective of their gender. From the very childhood, it is that the boys, it is a discrimination that we create ourselves in the society while raising our child, or whether it a boy or a girl. We need to place human being first rather than placing any gender first. Starting from the sexual education or the sex education to the upbringing to the mental support and even the professional choice that we take, once we are educated and at the time of taking any professional courses or so on, then only we can call it a balanced society and the world would be a better place to live in. Working for man does not mean, or working for a man right here, it does not mean that we are against women. We are against those women who are taking the undue advantage and make the society imbalanced. All right. The sexual aggression that I heard someone was talking about is, I believe, that is just a repercussion because boys are not given that sexual education at the very early childhood. No one talked to them about the educating them. It is just, if someone, we know that if someone is deprived of something, the urge to have the same thing get triple or quadruple, right? So hence the gender equality, I believe, should be taught from the very first place, from the very early childhood. Then only I believe, or we believe that we could have that balance in the society rather than giving advantage to one gender. It always has to be gender equal and gender equal.
All right. We actually appreciate your contribution on this conversation. And as we look at, as we draw this close to an end, we are expecting each and everyone to actually give about 12 of us here, give your final thoughts on what we can do to ensure that we raise a young boy who behave sexually from their homes. And for the women who will listen to this, what can a mother do who is a mom of a son? I don't want to refer, excuse me. I I do not want to refer to them as single mothers. They are mothers of sons. And these sons are under their roof. What can they do to support them at the point where they have their rush for hormones growing, and all the information you think can support them to cultivate their boys and help them talk to their boys about healthy sexual reproductive behavior or sexuality behavior. Because I did find out that a whole number of teenage unwed fathers are on the rise, right? How do we reduce this number of unwed teenagers that is growing increasingly in today's world? How do they control themselves? What do we have to say about it? Uncle Adisa, what's your thought? We start with.
I had to turn my mic back on. Okay, you know what? I hate to speak for women, but I may have to in this case, because when my son was a little boy, I engaged him in everything, the YMCA, the this, that, and the other. And when I used to take him to swimming on Friday, there were nothing but single women there who referred to me or deferred to me. And I thought that was good. You know, as far as what the men should do, it's probably a lot tougher for us considering most of the time we're not the single parent. But I have to go back to the women. If they could find groups of positive men to bring their male children in particularly around, because there's so much images on TV. You guys were talking about the alternative lifestyles, right? And I was telling you about the media. Here's a problem. They have so many commercials with black men, in particular men, black men with boyfriends in the commercials. So our children, they have to see that. And some of us believe that that's normal behavior. Whether you believe it's normal or not, that's not even the issue. It's just that you don't see those same images with white men. They got a boyfriend on the commercial. You only really see black men. You don't see any other men that have a boyfriend on a commercial on a regular basis. And most of the time, the guy's boyfriend is a white guy. The boyfriend, you guys seen the commercials, and I'm trying to figure out where they trying to come from with this. That look, I'm 5'6". If I told you I was 6'5", and you saw me in person, you wouldn't believe me. So as far as all these pronouns, a lot of times I'm not in a space where I have to address it. But if I have to address it, I would ask the person, so if you believe that you are the other gender, then when I tell you I'm 6'5", you should believe me, and you shouldn't resist against it. You know? But a lot of it, like I said, you'd be surprised how many people who are in a lifestyle, young and old, who come from single parent households, who have been molested by either a man or a woman. They've done studies. You know, we can all check them for ourselves, men and women. I'm not putting it on just the women. I mean, just the man. It has been women that have been sexually assaulting these young boys in these single parent households.
That's another interesting area to explore.
Well, it all ties together, Ola.
Yeah,
like I said, the single parent households, the mother bringing traffic into the house. She doesn't know her girlfriend has got her eye on her son.
Yeah.
And as a result, causes confusion in a little child's head. Next thing you know, he becomes a teenager and he tells you I'm a woman.
Well, Nkechi, are you here? I would love to throw this question to Nkechi. Because
Yes, I'm here.
there are occasions I want to really ask you this question. How do you deal with a situation where you find women exploring young boys in terms of abusive sexual behaviors?
You're
What?
asking me the question?
No. I'm taking that to Nkechi because
Oh, let me
yeah,
cut my mic off.
yeah. We have situations where when boys are abused very early in life sexually by women, majority of them, they feel hot and they want to take back on other women when they grow up because I was taking maybe this okay, they took advantage of me as a young boy. And as at that time, it was not in my consent, there was no consent here. And the boy grew up and seen this older lady who abused him when he was younger and decided to say, for every woman I'm going to come about in my life, I'm going to abuse them. I'm going to be aggressive towards them sexually. And that makes this boy to behave aggressively or unhealthy towards them sexually. How do we address these issues, Nkechi? What can the society do?
Okay.
You have an experience on that?
Oh my God, I have too many stories. So let me pick a one. I'm also a journalist, so I was on radio talking about boys' sexual abuse. And this man called in and said, I want to talk about myself. And I was abused by an older girl when I was he was like about 3 or 4 or so. And he said to me on radio that ever since then, he has had uncontrollable sexual urge. He has to have sex on a daily basis. He says, look, there are times I rape. And I was like, whoa, he said, look, I'm being very sincere. I'm in trouble. I cannot do without sex. So the consequences of boys being exposed to sex or being abused quite early by older women and by older girls is devastating. I have countless stories of men who had opened up to me how they were abused, raped by 3. I have one, Abiola. He was raped by 3 undergraduates. He was 11 at that time. They took turns on him indoors for hours. He said, I grew angry and I began to rape other girls within my community. He was 13 at that time. So it's quite devastating. So I have been championing the campaign that look, there is another sexual predators that are women. I've said it countless times that men are not the only sexual predators. They are not. And we need to come to that terms where we can agree that women are also sexual predators. When we come to that crescendo, we will begin to champion the cause for us as parents to be very careful. I've heard stories of besties who have sex with their friend's son. It is a common trend, unfortunately. The boys are not speaking up about it. That's why it looks as if the women are not doing it. They're doing it. They are doing it. And we need to address that. And I think the law must come into full force. I am angry when I see that lots of women would abuse boys sexually in America, and they will be given a slap on the wrist sentence. And I'm like, whoa, why? They should be jailed because it's sexual, it is rape. Now, I am quite, whenever I talk about this, I become very, very angry and even emotional because it hurts. Because I have seen countless boys tell me their stories and how they feel so miserable. I had a young guy who called me and said, please, I need your help. I'm 21. I was raped by a lady when I was a young boy. I was also raped by a man. I am confused about my sexuality. Am I gay? I have anxiety, panic attacks. I can't sleep. I'm wondering what who I am. So I had to refer him to a psychologist for counseling. So it is that the first stage. So I think first and foremost, let's come to the agreement that women are also sexual predators. Let's have laws that will protect boys the way we protect our girl child as well. Let's have laws written out clearly, because unfortunately, in my country, rape is termed when the penis enters the vagina. So when it comes to the boy, they're unable to understand how do you marry that for the boy child? Because he is the one being, being brutalized. So we are trying to tweak the law that we must come to terms that as long as a boy is less than 18, if whoever, be you an older girl, be you a female, do anything with that boy sexually, it's a crime. So I think we must address that.
Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, it took us to another dimension of conversation that we can look up to, and that it's going to be so hot because not many people want to really come out to express this. But I do believe there are men out there that are victims of these experiences and that want to speak up about it. So we cannot close this conversation. Like I told you from the beginning, these are conversations people are running away to open up in public discourse. And we've actually started, and it's going to lead us into further conversations that we can see how we can address where women have become predators to our young boys, and how the consequences of this has become like a kind of an aggressive sexual behavior towards both women and girls. And what can we do? Are there laws? How can we put these laws into place? How can we advocate for our young men there so that we are protecting our young girls? We also protect our our young boys, who are our next generations of men. So with that being said, I want to appreciate everyone on this call tonight and this evening, for wherever you are joining us from India, from New York. For those of you who are unable to join us because of the outpouring of the blessings of the universe, which is rain, I know definitely you're going to be watching this program. And we say a big thank you for joining. And we look forward to another conversation coming up in May on boys and mental health. So looking up to that, I want to draw a close to today's conversation, and I want to appreciate you for your time, for the energy you bring into the conversation. Do not forget, I love you so much, and I appreciate your time with me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nkechi. Thank you, all Indian. Thank you, and I say God bless.
Thank you.